There was a guy I worked with in the post office back in the 1980s, 30 years ago. And I was thinking of him today, he popped into my head. His name was Peter. And Peter was one of these guys that stressed out about the job, even more so than his employer. He was always uptight, always anxious, always panicking. We used to call him Panicky Peter. And in the post office in the 1980s, there was a lot of industrial unrest. And both sides, the unions and the management, went through the motions, like a dance. The union would state its position on something it wasn't happy with, and the management would state its position, and there'd be a bit of a standoff, and eventually there'd be some talk, some discussion, and it would be resolved, and all would be well until the next dispute arose, and there was several disputes. So both sides, people on both sides were even friendly. You go out for a drink sometimes with people who were on the opposite side of the negotiation table with you. And everybody understood the way things worked. Politics, I suppose, if you like. But Peter used to get always upset and always anxious. He found it very difficult to make a decision, worried a lot about anything. And I remember sometimes when a dispute was arising, maybe the postmaster would go on holidays, his next in line would go on sick leave, and inevitably Peter would find himself in the boss's chair having to make a decision. So he panicked and he took the job much more seriously, much too seriously. And I remember one morning Peter came into work. He was 57. He came in, didn't feel too well. He always looked very pale and pasty anyways. He was always a very skinny bloke. But he was advised to, take the day off, go home. And even then he was kind of reluctant to go home. He thought the job couldn't do without him. So one of the lads got him in a post van, drove him out to his house. And Peter put his front key in the front door, twisted in the lock and collapsed, dead. Heart attack. And what I remember about Peter's funeral, and in a way some of it is a little bit funny, I was working that day and I knew the area where Peter was living, and I went down to the church that evening after the removal, and the coffin was up there at the altar, and I sat there. I said my few prayers of respect, said my goodbyes, and then I thought I'd just go and put a mass card on top of the coffin. And when I went up there, it was actually somebody else's coffin that was there. It wasn't his at all. He was been buried in his home place, which was way out the west. But why I tell this anecdote is on the day of Peter's funeral, the post office didn't even close for the hour of his funeral. And I thought, that's never going to happen to me. I made a decision that day that I'd be A, treated with respect, and B, that I would make my own decisions, become my own boss. Now, it took me a while to get out of the job, to extract myself from that job, and to be in my current job. But that story still stays with me. And I think why it was in my head, I saw something online today about, would you like to fire your boss? Now, many of you, you might have a nice boss, many of you haven't, but do you really like to be told what to do, what time to come in at, what time you can take your break, sit up, stand up, go out, come in, when you can take your holidays, all of that kind of thing, how much money you are allowed to take home and spend on yourself on a weekly basis? If you are, fine. Be happy and be content with that. And, for some people, there's a lot to be said for a wage packet coming in every week. But if you're of the entrepreneur mindset and you want a little bit more out of life, you want more, you want a feeling of living, not just punching in the hours until you get a break, till you get to the weekend, till you get to your seasonal holiday, or till you get to retirement, or if you drop dead shortly after you retire or finish work, which a lot of people, funny enough, in the post office did, and there's a reason for that. I think sometimes we become our job. You say, he is a postman, he is a fireman, he is a builder, he is a butcher, he's a shopkeeper, he's a teacher. And really, your identity can get caught up in your job. I'm much more than my job. I'm much more than that. I'm a person, and I want to live my life to the fullest, to express myself to the fullest. And therefore, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to make my own decisions. I don't want anybody to limit me or to say, thus far shalt thou go, to quote Charles Stuart Parnell, talking about something else. Anyways, I'm Paul Gill. I'll talk to you soon.